Good evening. It is Wednesday, July 15th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Welcome, friends. We are here for the CCRPC Board of Directors meeting. A reminder that we are recording and there will be a transcript available. So calling to order, are there any changes to the agenda? I believe we have two, and there may be others. Before item 13, our traditional item of members' items. And also for number 5, tip amendment, there's an add-on description of a forthcoming second tip amendment, which is time sensitive. The reason for that will become clear when we reach that agenda item. Are there any other changes or modifications to tonight's agenda? I'm not seeing any. Moving forward, we're on to item 2, public comment period for items not on the agenda. Are there members of the public here this evening who want to make comments for items not on the agenda?
The one in the main conference room?
Boy, the sound is pretty bad there. If I don't miss my understanding, it's Chuck Lacey, though. Welcome, Chuck.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I'd say maybe talk slowly because it's kind of marginal.
It should. How's that sound now?
A bit better.
Better?
Chuck Lacey, I'm from Jericho. I've spoken to you before about the exclusionary zoning tactics used by a fair number of Chittenden County towns and the role this commission plays by encouraging and approving the town plans that guide and support these exclusionary zoning tactics. As I've said before, Boston has its exclusive suburbs, Lexington and Newton. New York City has Rye and Greenwich. Philadelphia has the Blue Line, and Burlington has Charlotte, Underhill, and Jericho, all exclusive by design and all unconscionable. There is no organic reason for the wealth and exclusivity in the towns surrounding Burlington. No organic reason for it. 50 years ago, new teachers could get scholarship and student loan benefits by agreeing to teach in then modest towns like Charlotte, Jericho, and Richmond. But after 50 years of exclusionary zoning, MMU and CVU now have the wealth to use salary and benefits to recruit the strongest teachers away from towns with more typical wealth. Today, you are discussing language access. Your materials say the Burlington School District, with 3,200 students, has 500 students receiving English language services. The MMU School District, serving 2,600 students, almost as big as Burlington, has a grand total of 6 students receiving English language services. Burlington has 1 English language learner for every 6 or 7 students. MMU has 1 English learner for every 500 students. You can't have a language discussion without at least wondering why this is. While Burlington, South Burlington, and Muskin are teaching English, MMU doesn't have to worry about that. And MMU has the wealth to offer Spanish immersion programs for all students beginning in kindergarten. Could this be because Jericho bans condos on 87% of its land area? That over 500 of our homes are in neighborhoods with HOAs that ban all familiar forms of more affordable housing? Or that in the last 5 years, we've permitted 5 entirely new neighborhoods of single-family luxury homes on cul-de-sacs, all of them where multifamily housing is banned in the name of preserving our character. That is why the average cost of a house built in Jericho in 2025 was $963,000. According to the Vermont Housing finance agency, it takes an annual income of $322,000 to buy the average cost new house in Jericho. After my comments at multiple ECOS hearings, there seemed to be the intention to at least discuss the income and housing disparity among Chittenden County towns, maintained intentionally and with the support and encouragement from this commission. You approved unanimously and without discussion Charlotte's long-term goal of increasing housing starts from just 6 per year to 7 per year. That is clear support for continuing the income disparity. You all know about the income and housing disparity between the exclusive towns and the more regular towns. This does not happen by accident. I look forward to seeing you meet the commitments to equity in the ECOS plan, making them real. And I think I would begin by just plain telling the truth about all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Any other public comments for items not on the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, moving forward to one of our major topics tonight, number 3, the Agency of Transportation presentation from Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed.
Good evening, all. My name is Jeremy Reed. I'm the Chief Engineer for the Agency of Transportation. Asked here tonight to give a little bit of an overview of where we are from a fiscal constraint perspective and what the future may or may not hold for bringing projects into the program. I want to preface this conversation by saying it's a snapshot in time. As many of you know, the IIJA Surface Transportation Bill has run its course and is due to be reauthorized October 1 of this year. That has not happened yet, and our program will be very dependent on what Washington does on that front, whether it be a continuing resolution or a reauthorization. So with that, I have a relatively short presentation, and I'd happily take any question for the topic. Okay. So BPSP2 is how we bring projects into the program. I think most of you are probably familiar with that. And can you still see my presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I won't go into depth on that, but you probably do know that over the last 4 or so years, we haven't added any new projects to the program. The scoring criteria for VPSP2 is safety, asset condition, mobility, connectivity, economic access, resiliency, environment, community, and health access. Once a project gets into the program, we then have to add it to the annual sort of construction program. So it's a bit of a 2-step process because every project progresses at different rates due to environmental permitting, design time, fiscal constraints, etc. So VPSP2 is how a project gets into the program, and then we have a tiered sequencing methodology that dictates what projects will see construction funding in any given year. The first year, and within a tier, there's no order of hierarchy or priority. It's just kind of a tiered approach. So the first tier, and these are the projects that automatically get brought into the program, is continuation of ongoing construction projects. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Projects that are already awarded, safety critical needs, and grant or time limited funding projects. So that's if we have funding either through a CDS, a congressionally directed spending, or a grant that has obligation limitations associated with the project, we will bring that project into the program automatically. Tier 2 consists of projects that are managed by neighboring states. Generally not an issue up in Chittenden County, but a good example would be down in Brattleboro. Over the last couple of years, they had a big bridge, Brattleboro, Hinsdale. And so that was a New Hampshire project that we committed to. And so the funding for that project automatically got brought into the program. If there's any critical asset conditions that would dictate we're at a threshold. So either it's at the end of its service life and we absolutely need to replace it, or if the selected treatment, preservation or rehabilitation, if we lose that treatment by further delays, we'll bring that project into the program. Again, the intent there is to have the right treatment at the right time, and recognizing that a little bit of preservation or rehabilitation can
And the life of I wake up just like many of you.
Can save significant money over the long haul. And similarly, deferral cost risk, where much like what I was just saying, if we delay the project, it will cost significantly more in the future.
Jeremy?
Yes.
This is Jeff Carr. Can we just we have so many new members on our board. Can we give them a little context? What you're describing, I think, to me, is what happens to a project after it goes through our process. The MPO approves it in our TIP, which then moves it up to the State Transportation Improvement Program. And you're talking about what happens from there on, correct?
It's really what goes into the TIP and what gets programmed into our white book, which basically is which the TIP is part of, which is a fiscal year's anticipated construction funding.
Right. So I just wanted our members to know this is what happens after we do our work and pass it up the line.
Yeah. And there's a lot of dependencies with that. Like I said, how fast we can get through right-of-way, environmental permitting,
Right.
Project readiness is the first criteria that has to happen.
Because we just do planning studies and scoping. We don't do construction bidding or all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted our members to know that.
Correct. Well, the third tier is dependency projects. So this actually does happen quite a bit in Chittenden County. If a phase of a project is a precursor to another project, and so as an example, the Diverging Diamond and the Burlington-Winooski Bridge, we got to a point where the Diverging Diamond couldn't be delayed anymore. And so in order to facilitate the construction of the Burlington-Winooski Bridge on time, we had to have construction of the Diverging Diamond when we did. So whenever you have sequential projects, those get brought into tier 3. Any network-wide performance projects, so we have performance targets for both bridge and pavement condition. And when we look at the network condition as a whole, and we have both state targets and federal targets, if a project makes meaningful impacts for any of those performance targets, they get brought into the program. And then lastly, federal match maximization. So as many of you know, the federal share can vary from 80% upwards to 100%. And to the extent that we may be state constrained on the budgetary side, we would try to maximize those federal funds. How that plays out in real life is we may do a paving project on the interstate instead of a state highway system, just because that would be a 90-10 split as opposed to 80-20. This is generally where the decisions are made. Tier 1 and tier 2 are, kind of automatics. Tier 3 is where we have a little bit of more discretion, and this is generally where the decisions are actually made. Tier 4 is readiness to proceed. So after we've exhausted everything else, we look at what else is ready to be brought into the program. Certainly in recent years, this has not been a problem. We just haven't had the financial resources to move past tier 3. And to some extent, we've had to delay projects that were ready and were originally anticipated to be constructed in any given fiscal year. And then regional prioritization. So again, if we did have, all else being equal, 2 similar projects, we would look to the RPCs for a prioritization. What project would be more meaningful to the region? Again, unfortunately, we haven't had that luxury over the last couple of years. And then lastly, and again, haven't really been here in my entire career, avoiding overloading any specific type of construction. So this is where we need to recognize how much capacity industry has either on bridges, signals, or paving, as an example. Anything that would help meet our long-term strategic goals. So climate resiliency, modal connectivity, or other innovation or safety corridor type things. And then lastly, geographic equity, trying to disperse the projects relatively evenly and proportionally across the state. Again, Tier 5 hasn't really come into play my entire career. So that's how we sequence projects. And now I'll just give you a bit of a snapshot in time of where we are fiscally. And again, I can't stress this enough. This is awfully dependent on what Washington will be doing over the next 6 to 8 months. So in the current funding paradigm, our budget is roughly $325 million for projects. Within that, we try to distribute that money, roughly $100 million in paving, $100 million on bridges. Of that, 55 goes to the interstate system, 25 to the state system, and 20 to the town highway system. Now, those are projects that's exclusive of any grants that may come from maintenance or district level. 40 million in roadway, 40 million in traffic and safety, and then we have 30 million in emergent needs and preservation projects. And that 30 million is spread across paving, bridges, and roadway. So it's roughly 10 million each for those programs. So as we look at the current budget or the current program and what we have budgeted so far, I'll just give you an example of a couple of the bigger programs to see sort of what the capacity is. On the Interstate Bridge Program, as we just mentioned, it's roughly $55 million target in today's world. And you can see we're essentially at or above that out to roughly 2035. And that's with projects that are already programmed. The need has been established and they are actually in the program at this point. The roadway program is actually significantly worse. Some of that is just due to emergent need type project. So the roadway program consists of anything from roadway reconstruction, signals, ledge projects, slope stabilization, and small culverts, less than 6 feet, all land in the roadway project. The roadway program is burdened by a bunch of legacy projects that are upwards of 20 to 40 years old, even in some cases, that we've committed to regions or municipalities to do significant projects. And they just exact a high price on the program. And by those, I mean like Swanton, Route 78, Pittsford Brandon, Cabot Danville, Putney Road down in Brattleboro, Route 22A up through Addison County. All of these projects are significant projects that in some cases are in excess of $40 million. And so in today's budget allocation, we are seeing the program full out past 2043. Paving, we have a $100 million target at this point. Now, for better or worse, the program isn't as full on the paving side of the house. Now, that, at least at first glance, gives us some level of optimism. The unfortunate reality is that paving deteriorates faster than roadway and bridge projects. So the life cycle of those projects dictate that we program them and deliver them in a much shorter time period. And for that reason alone, we don't have projects in the program beyond 2035, 2036, showing, the program is absolutely full, because we know that deterioration elsewhere in the network will continue to populate the program at that level. So I don't want this graph to make it appear as though the paving program is looking for projects right now. It's just the natural churn is a much shorter duration. And we program to deliver those projects a lot faster. So that was a very quick high-level snapshot of where we are fiscally right now. And I'll open it to any questions from the members.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jeff, I think your hand was first, then Dana. Can't hear you.
Sorry, my mouse was jumping around. How much linear length does $1 million repave nowadays?
So it's very dependent on the treatment type. Our treatments can be as cheap as $300,000 a mile, as expensive as a little over $1 million a mile. So class 1 town highways, as an example, where we've got a lot of utilities, a lot of traffic, oftentimes night work, especially in Chittenden County, that's going to be a little over $1 million a mile. A thin preservation type treatment on a state highway is closer to $300,000 a mile.
Thank you, Jeff. Dana.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the Route 22A project that you mentioned includes the bypass around Virgins to Route 7, and if not, what is the status of that?
So it doesn't. Basically, we did a Pell study, as you probably know, and the preferred alternatives, and I'm going to pull these numbers a little bit from memory, were upwards of I want to say 200+ million for the bypass. And, you know, as you can see in the roadway program, there's just absolutely no capacity for a project of that magnitude at this point. So we have worked with Addison County RPC, the town of Virgins, trying to do things to make the situation better. But at this time, there's no forward progress with the Virgins bypass.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Dana. Garrett.
Hello. A question based on some past experience. There was a project about 15 years ago to replace a culvert with a concrete arch bridge in Buell's Gore on Route 17 going up over the Appalachian Gap. And I was the town government at that point, and I interacted a great deal with the state engineer on site and with the AOT. And it became very clear that the planning for it was done by looking at a map and not going on site. And they ended up bringing in several hundred tandem loads of dirt and gravel to fill a ravine and run a road across because it looked like the shortest path. Actually, local knowledge could have told people that the old roadway, which went around the outside of the turn, was still in halfway decent shape, and with some gravel and a culvert could have done the job just as well, done far less damage to the area, and cost far less. So my question is if AOT has had any kind of change in thinking about involving the local community further than they did back 15 or so years ago, because the local knowledge can add so much value to it. So I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I can't really draw a stark contrast to what happened 15 years ago just because I don't know. But I can offer that it is our standard practice now to host multiple local concerns meetings. You know, obviously look at record plans, site visits, absolutely mandatory. And, you know, depending on the location of the road, you know, the local maintenance forces oftentimes provide insight, and certainly municipalities, you know, road foremen that have been around forever can be a valuable resource as well. So that's certainly part of a project development process in today's environment.
That's very good to hear. At the time, the notification the community got was a pike truck pulling in and starting to set up work for doing it.
Yeah,
So hopefully that's changed a lot
yeah, I
since
mean,
then.
I will sort of caveat my previous statement that if we have a pipe failure, as an example, that all gets condensed
Oh,
condensed
for sure.
drastically,
Of
right?
course.
But
Yeah,
in
of
a
course.
typically capital programmed project, you know, there's multiple avenues of outreach to gain that local knowledge.
Great. Thank you. Really glad to hear it. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Jeremy, for being here. Really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for explaining kind of the pressures on the program from kind of the needs side and the project side. Can you talk a little bit about the revenue side? You know, I thought I was hearing things maybe earlier in the legislative session about concern about having enough local match. I think that must have been resolved for FY27, but yeah, can you just kind of talk about revenue? And obviously the federal government's a big part of that, but anyway, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the state match has been an issue for, I'll just say 3 or so years now. In FY26, the government proposed, and we were able to recapture, I'll say, a little over $20 million. That was historically known as the JTOC appropriation that went to public safety. This past year, we were able to recapture another 10 million, which historically has gone to the Ed Fund with I think, fairly strong commitment to recapture another 10 million next year for a $20 million recapture. And right now, that total fund, the Ed Fund receives, I'll just say, somewhere in the neighborhood of $52 to $54 million. And it was the administration's position that we would recapture that entirety over a 5-year period. As you know, the end of the session, there was a lot of, I'll just say, horse trading. And the commitment we got out of the legislature is that we would get 10 million for the first 2 years and then look at that subsequently. Now, the state match pressure is certainly dependent on the federal side of the house, and I don't want to basically say our sole objective is just to have enough funds to match the federal funds. Again, I think probably the majority of the members know, unfortunately, VTrans did have to lay off some personnel this past year, and we saw some budget trims on state maintenance activities and some other state-only programs. So, you know, there's a lot of needs, and right now we're really focused on the revenue that comes in through transportation users. I will add that we are on schedule to implement a mileage-based user fee for electric vehicles starting, I believe, in January of 27. And there's some discussion whether or not that would expand to hybrids over a period of time and potentially even high efficiency vehicles. So revenue is absolutely part of the conversation. I think both sides of the aisle in Montpelier agree on that. It's a matter of how they achieve that. And certainly there's a direct nexus to education reform, just because a third of the purchase and use historically has gone to the Ed Fund.
Thank you. Matt.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi. So yeah, good evening. I just wanted to build upon what Jeremy was mentioning about public outreach and engagement in the project development process. You know, that is where it's the importance of, you know, how the regional planning team also assists the RPC in providing that channel of local information and regional information into our projects. So again, underscoring the importance of making sure that local plans and visions are up to date, and certainly the region does its work too with the ECOS plan and the regional plan. Anything that is a plan and a vision provides the context that is then input that helps us channel those inputs into our projects that where appropriate, incorporate those desires. And so just to kind of underscore the importance of the planning process as well in that framework of channeling local information into our project development, apart from, and then as Jeremy mentioned, specific to projects, all of the local outreach and engagement that happens within those projects. So it happens before the project, during the project, and then even after, and kind of assessing impacts and thinking about, again, the performance of the changes made over time. So I just wanted to call attention to multiple places where those inputs are welcome and important to helping guide us in the work that we do.
Thank you. That's helpful. We're
And
close to
if I-
time.
If I could for a second, just to build on that, because I realize some of the board members may not know this, but in January, VTrans went through a reorganization where planning, Matthew's team specifically, came into the highway division. Historically, they were part of the policy planning and intermodal development division. And so what we've done is we brought the planner coordinators into the highway division to have a much more direct conduit for that input that Matthew just spoke of. So this is part of that effort to try to be much more direct with our PCs and hear from them as we develop projects.
Thank you. We're close to time. I'd like to ask one question. I hope it's not a convoluted or complex one. When I was contemplating your description of the prioritization in categories, could you succinctly or briefly describe how that prioritization works? Like you have a host of projects, who does what and how to decide what gets to the top and what moves down?
Sure. So my staff continues to stress that it's not prioritization, it's sequencing, and I don't know if that's a distinction without a difference, but we'll go with it. And I think the effort there is that, if a project is that far along in design, it's just a matter of when it's going to be in the construction program, and I think that's what they have in their mind. So generally the way this works is I give the programs a budget target, $100 million, for instance, for the paving program. And we look at, and then the program manager basically just starts bringing those projects in tier by tier, right? So tier one, anything under construction, all those things. And then normally when we get to about the tier three area, we start looking at the projects, and that's when the asset management team, myself, the program managers kind of get in the room and say, okay, we've got X amount of money left, and these are the projects that are currently still on the board. And to some extent, it's a bit of a game of Tetris too. So for instance, it isn't as straightforward as maybe I led you to believe, in that there's like some qualitative scoring or quantitative scoring that can just load a project. So if we have, for instance, just say $6 million left in a fiscal year's program, but a project that we'd really like to bring in is going to be an $8 million hit and then another $10 million hit the following year. We have to kind of play a bit of a puzzle game there to make sure that we don't overburden out years and we have the right size project for the capacity that we have. But that's basically when push comes to shove and we're selecting the last couple projects in any given program. How it works is asset management, myself, and the program manager get together and just make those hard choices based on everything that I described previously.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any final questions or comments from folks here tonight? I am not seeing anything. The timing works out well as well. Thank you, Jeremy. I'd like to point out, while folks here did not receive a copy of the presentation in advance, we will distribute a copy of the presentation.
Very good. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Jeremy.
you.
I think we're moving on to item 4, then the draft minutes of the June 17th, 2026 annual board meeting.
I'd move approval with corrections. This is Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Garrett, I'll second.
Thank you, Garrett. Any modifications, corrections? Catherine, I'd be disappointed if I did not see your hand.
It's interesting. Karen Peterson from Williston was both there and not there. In the she was listed as present and then she was listed as absent.
That's happened to me before, both there and not there.
But that was the thing that really jumped out at me.
So we'll need to resolve that. She was either there or not. Thank you,
I
Catherine.
believe she was absent.
Ah.
I don't think she was there.
Thank you. Any other comments, corrections, edits? Not hearing or seeing anything. All in favor of approving the draft minutes as corrected, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? It looks like we are good to go. Miles, is your hand up for the vote or for a different?
No, I was not at the annual meeting, so I'm abstaining from approval of minutes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Miles. Okay, that motion passes. Moving on to item 5, the tip amendment.
Yeah, thanks. I will do my best to pick this up in Christine's absence. She is at a meeting in Heinsberg tonight. So in your packet on page 5 is the memo around this minor tip amendment. It's basically $900,000 of additional funds in FY26 to the Exit 16 project, which Jeremy just mentioned. They are trying to, I think, really get in and done before, I think, kind of before the end of September. I think they want it to be open. It won't be done by the end of September, but the traffic pattern will be in by the end of September, I understand. So that's the tip amendment in front of you. I believe this was reviewed by the TAC and recommended to the board at their meeting 2 weeks ago. And Brian's confirming that. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks. You'll see that as agenda item 5 in the materials that point out that the staff and TAC recommended that the board approve the proposed tip amendment.
Mr. Chair, I move approval. This is Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Second.
Thank you, Catherine. Any further comments or discussion?
Note that this is an MPO vote.
Yes, thank you, Garrett. It is an MPO vote. So MPO members, please indicate approval by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? That passes. And so moving on to
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes.
What just one point of information, I think maybe you mentioned it at the outset. There is, and this is just I guess for information for the board. We just got in the last day or two information from VTrans about another required tip amendment related to the Winooski Burlington Bridge. Unfortunately, it didn't get to us in time to make it into your packet or to even get it to you a couple days in advance for you to review. I think from a staff perspective, I'm going to ask for the board's understanding if we ask the executive committee to approve that tip amendment in between your meetings at their August meeting. VTrans needs to have it in place by mid-August because they're going out to bid and all the federal paperwork needs to be lined up, including our tip, before they can get it out to bid and get it done. But it's a long list, a lot of money moving because it's not just the bridge. There's multiple projects. This is kind of related to what Jeremy was saying. Sometimes there's projects that need to be done before a project. So there's like a ramp change at exit 15, an intersection change in Burlington, and at Riverside and Barrett. And so just a heads up, I guess it will include information about it in your next packet for your awareness. And certainly, Winooski and Burlington reps, if you want more detail, let me know. I think I can, I'll try to share it as soon as we have something ready.
Thank you. Ann, do you have a question or comment?
We don't have a meeting in August, do we?
No, I'm sorry. What I was trying to say was that we're going to end up asking the executive committee to approve it on behalf of the board at their August 5th meeting.
Okay.
And I'll just note that given that that project in the best case scenario is in the neighborhood of a 2-year project, I think we appreciate the sensitivity towards time and delays. So Charlie, I presume after the executive committee meets on this, there will be a follow-up, at least a touch base with the board of directors.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll either do some sort of independent email or something, but
okay.
So you all get the details on it.
All right. Any questions or comments on that item? An additional item, I'll call it 5.1. Hearing and seeing none, moving forward to item 6, the Language Access Plan, or LAP.
That is me. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah,
yes.
Cool. Nice to see you all. Hope everyone's enjoying the summer. The board, the exec committee has seen this maybe 3 times at this point, and the board has already reviewed it. I know there's some new faces in the room tonight. I'm not going to go through the whole thing in depth because we've already done that with the full board, but I will just review some key points in this memo. High level language access plan for CCRPC is a part of, or like one of the pieces of the public participation plan that we're in the process of updating. CCRPC has not had a language access plan in the past. Pieces of it have been incorporated into the public participation plan. This one was developed using national best practices, federal guidance, and lots of community input. It applies to all CCRPC staff members and projects, providing policies, procedures, and responsibilities to really help ensure that people who use languages other than English and folks who use alternative communication methods have access to the same information and services as English-speaking individuals free of cost, to really make sure that we can include as many people in the community as possible in planning decision-making. So since you all last saw this, a few edits have been made. Nothing major has changed, but I tried to kind of streamline and simplify repetitive language throughout the document. I added a strategy for tracking and monitoring CCRPC staff usage of language access services across projects and meetings. We expanded some implementation guidance for working with interpreters, including really encouraging staff to share acronyms and technical terminology in advance when possible. I added a brief sentence that clarifies that staff can use kind of readily available tools such as Google Translate for brief informal communication when appropriate, but that they should not be used for professional interpretation or translation. Clarified that the appendices of this language access plan, which really is kind of like the meat of this in terms of usability, it like details all of the resources and services available to staff, can be updated without board approval. It's mostly like contact information for actual interpretation and translation services or communication assistance services, with details like cost so that staff can appropriately budget. Just a note that the term was updated, Essex Westford School District. I had left out Westford previously. I did a final consistency and formatting review. And then this last bullet point is really just a note that we'll continue to kind of monitor and explore emerging AI-based translation and interpretation tools. I know this landscape is rapidly changing, and so we will revisit this language access plan in some capacity each year to just make sure we're best serving staff and also kind of up to date with what technology makes the most sense to lean on here while balancing leaning on technology and supporting local services. So that's pretty much it in terms of updates. Everything else in the document is still the same. And I think the hope for tonight is to move that the board approves the language access plan. But does anybody have questions or comments or thoughts for that? Or for anyone who hasn't seen it before, any questions?
And Nelson, this is Jeff. Do we know or have any idea of what the budget impact would be of this program? Or is this just like so new, we don't know what the incidence is going to be and that kind of thing?
It's so new, we don't really know. I will say we've been providing interpretation and translation for the Community Engagement Advisory Committee for long enough that we understand kind of what it costs each month to do that for one committee meeting. But realistically, like, you know, it's going to vary based on project and context, and we just don't know yet. That's part of the reason this tracking form will be helpful to just kind of see how need emerges over time. And I hope the need increases, but yeah, we don't really have numbers yet.
And Jeff, I'm going to say it's, you know, in the high single thousands, you know, maybe 10, but it's also, you know, covered for when we're doing transportation projects, certainly covered by our MPO funding. And we'll use regional planning funding if we're non.
Yeah, I was just looking for an educated guess. Yeah. I didn't think we knew.
Yeah.
And you know, whenever we go down this road, we always should at least make an educated guess for budgetary purposes, but I realize it's not a big ticket item. Likely not a big ticket item. But if we promote it right, it might become bigger.
Yeah. And I think at that point, like leaning more heavily on you know, technology that's available. If in the long run, if we imagined a world where, you know, we were using language access services a lot, I think it probably makes more sense to go down that road. And right now we're leaning pretty heavily on local interpreters and translators. So balancing that as well.
And Nelson, it seems implicit or embedded in Jeff's question is the ability to both track and report what our actual experience has been over time. So at some point, you know, when we have enough data, it might be worth bringing it back to the group to say, here's what our real experience has been, just so people know, we know what we have accomplished or done.
It's a finance committee thing, you know?
Yeah, we'll definitely do that, Bard.
Any other comments, questions?
This is Garrett. I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Garrett.
This is Jackie. I'll second.
Thank you, Jackie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? I see a hand raised, I think.
Yeah, abstention.
One abstention. All right, thank you. Okay. One abstention and many ayes, so that motion passes. Thank you, Ann Nelson.
Thank you all.
Moving on to demographic forecasts.
Yes. Hey, Bard. I can introduce this one.
Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So we have been working with VTrans on this for some time. It's been almost 10 years since we've updated these. We would typically want to update them every 5 years, but with the pandemic, we decided to wait a little bit longer. And conveniently, I think Dave Pelletier's on the call. In conversations with him, VTrans was also looking to update their forecasts. And last time around, we were about a year out of sync, which wasn't great. So this time we're at the same point. And it's nice to be aligned. And so we've been working with VTrans on this, and VTrans has hired RSG, and RSG has also brought in a gentleman by the name of Jeff Carr. You might know him. He does some economic work, and so he's been helping out John Slayson, who's here to present tonight. And let's see, there is a memo in your packet. This is informational, and the PAC at their last meeting earlier this month approved these forecasts or recommended that the board adopt them eventually when they're ready. There was a little bit of a nuance or thing that was caught with the employment data. So we have since corrected those, and we plan on, well, you didn't receive the employment data in your packet, so we can follow up after this meeting and share that with you all. And we also plan to circulate some slightly revised numbers back to the PAC. They do not differ greatly, so we do expect them to still be on board with their previous approval, but nonetheless, those we do feel need to go back to the PAC, probably through an email communication in August, to hopefully set us up for an action on this at your September meeting.
And Jason, this is Jeff. And because I was a subcontractor to Jonathan and RSG, I'm going to recuse myself from any votes.
Okay.
But if the board wants me to, I can be around if there's a technical question that Jonathan thinks it's appropriate for me to try to answer. I'll be happy to do that. Or if any board member wants me to, I'll leave the meeting.
I'm going to suggest that Jeff remain present and silent unless spoken to. That's fair.
Hard to train kids that way.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
That sounds good. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it, and thanks for sorting that out. And yeah, without further ado, I think I'll pass this over to John Slayson at RSG.
Right. Thanks. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Slayson. I'm a managing consultant with RSG with now seems like over 2 decades of experience. And I was fortunate enough to be participating in the first iteration of this. I believe Joe Sigali, who you also a culprit here, was involved in some of that original work. So we have some great institutional memory here collectively. Same with Dave Pelletier at the agency. Dave, before I kick in, do you want to say anything further about the work that you're doing at the state?
Not at all. Thank you for letting me join. I'm just here to observe and have it sink in even further what work has already been done. Thank you.
All right. So a bit of background here, and Jeff, as a sub-consultant, he has been instrumental in helping us guide this, and his institutional memory has been invaluable for helping align with the state at large. Because many of you may realize that Jeff has wearing multiple hats. He has a role within the Joint Fiscal, or he helps develop a consensus forecast with the Joint Fiscal Office, so between the administration and the legislature. And so he's been helpful in setting this into context for us, is that Vermont, we use long-range transportation, we use long-range forecasts for our transportation work here at the MPO, as well as in the state for debt forecasting, for economic work, that the revenue side that Jeremy was just presenting at, and we use that in a variety of contexts. So we have relied on some of the work that has preceded us with the Joint Fiscal Office to provide us a bit of a handhold for at least the next 10 years. And we're looking to maintain alignment with that projection out to 2036. With that, we're maintaining alignment both at the MPO and the state for transportation planning purposes, but also for planning at large that's happening throughout the state. So I wanted to just highlight that this alignment is important and valuable for us to recognize. I will also say that the state is not unique, that we don't have any long-term official forecasts that go beyond that 2036 or that beyond that 10-year horizon that the Joint Fiscal Office prepares in that consensus forecast. So I start with some top line takeaways. I don't think any of us are going to be surprised by these, and if you read the packet, they haven't changed from the notes that we've shared. Our population and employment numbers in Vermont reflect national trends. We're trending older. We have a negative replacement rate, meaning our deaths are outnumbering our births, at least within the state. And over the past few years, we have definitely seen a decline in our international migration. So the population in Vermont has benefited over the last decade or more from both domestic and international migration. And we have seen that more recently, particularly affected. Now, it's also consistent that rural areas are more affected than more urbanized areas. And so within the state of Vermont, we know that the Chittenden County area and the surrounding counties of Addison and Franklin, Lamoille, even Washington have benefited from a more urbanized pull, if you will, that Chittenden County brings to the state. And so that other counties in the state are experiencing some stronger trends that is aligned with this national. We have developed various projections, and these are trend extrapolations. This is setting up our baseline of where we have been building our homes and where we have jobs, and we expand those trends going forward to the future. We have developed this in a couple different ways so that we can, I won't say triangulate, but basically hone in on a different set of opinions, because long-term forecasting is really a suite of opinions and informed opinions using both trends but also some local intelligence. And I will say that we are not explicitly accounting for some of the policy actions that many of you are very aware of, such as the housing target and those conversations. Housing targets, we have a couple slides to talk about. I'm just framing it up here, is a very intentional policy intervention that is being designed to basically counteract some of the trends that we're seeing in these trend analyses. Now, this slide we've shown to our regional counterparts around the state through our VAPTA partners, and we are looking to establish a statewide control for population. We have a various set of projections here, which are all showing to provide you a sense of where we land relative to other forecasts that have been done. Excuse me. Just to set this in a brief context, we've had, of course, every project has iterations, and so we had a first iteration. We then set further iterations at this 655. So this is where we're trying to set a control total for the state population at large out to the year 2050. We have other projections here, such as the Housing Finance Agency. We have this National Demography Unit out of University of Virginia. And then we had this strictly cohort component trend analysis based on our birth and death rates and migration trends. You'll notice that there's a bit of a peaking in most of these curves and then a downward trajectory. This is the baby boomer population cohort that is largely going to be passing over this period of time from 2040 to 2050. And we don't have a positive replacement rate for those individuals. And so most of these projections show some sort of a decline in the population in those later years. If we have any population that's increasing or a little bit of a tailing off in our recommendation here, we are basically expecting that we have some more positive return of international and domestic migration to counteract some of the reduction in our natural population. So this is setting up the statewide control, if you will. And Chittenden County behaves within this context. We have Chittenden County behaving differently than other counties. Pause briefly there. Jeff, I saw you almost raise a hand. Dave, you're looking at the statewide numbers. All right, we're comfortable to proceed. All right. This is all context setting. We're going to dive into some more details for your review, particularly the Chittenden County, but it is important for context. We do believe that Chittenden County is going to be at the higher end of any of the expectations that we've been developing. We're looking at a population number that's around 182,000. which is approximately 12,000 more net individuals than we are today. That means that we are counteracting some of the natural trends that we're seeing in our cohort projections, and that we are actively pursuing our housing target as a way to mitigate against some of those natural declines. We expect that some of the larger cities are closer to meeting their mid-range target, but some of the other smaller jurisdictions around the county may not be meeting their housing target. So this is it's a more optimistic relative to most other counties, but it's much more pessimistic relative to the housing target numbers that we've been discussing at large. I'm not going to spend time on the other counties. You have this slide. It changed only modestly, I think, for Chittenden County relative to what's in your packet. Now, diving into where we have spent time with the PAC. We have focused primarily on the delta between relative to today. And depending on what data set we're referencing, certain data sets are available for 2023, 2024. Some make an estimate of where we are in 2025. The delta, the center column, is where I want to draw your attention to. These numbers shouldn't have changed from what's in your packet and what the PAC has endorsed for your acceptance, except for Essex Junction and Essex. We juxtapose those in the recommendation for the delta. Basically, Essex Junction has a more optimistic trend on the population change than the town of Essex. So that is where there was a slight error in the way that we had presented that earlier to the PAC. But this data that you have on the screen here is what we are recommending for your consideration at this point, and then your September adoption. And we're focusing on this delta. So it's the 12,000 individuals, that net addition, and this is roughly how we, well, I would say precision is here. We're going out to single digits for folks, and you know, in Garrett Buellsgore, you get one more person added there for you. So we are trying to allocate those 12,000s based on this proportion. A little bit of context is that we're really guiding this based on the housing target because of the extensive work that's been done at each municipality, with each municipality. For example, South Burlington is receiving, or expected to receive, about 24% of the mid-range housing target numbers. They're receiving 24% of this population change. So it's very much tied to that allocation that was established in the housing targets. Are there any questions on this table?
I'd just say that the Buellsgore population is off by about 30%.
Yeah,
tiny numbers no, it's more like 30 people. Yeah, hugely significant countywide, but interesting that it's always much lower than what the actual population is.
Yeah, nah, ACS is a national model. It'd be amazing if they got it right. But thank you, Garrett. Appreciate it.
Always good for a laugh.
All right. Well, we'll continue on, and if there's other comments that come up. So I've discussed a little bit about how the housing target, I've referenced it several times, and that it is a particular policy objective to counteract some of the trends that we're showing in that data. The housing needs assessment that the Vermont Housing Finance Agency did, I forget what year it was, apologies on that, but they identified in the housing need assessment that they identified, as you may have recognized in some of those slopes at the statewide level, there was a stronger downward curve that they were forecasting. And VHFA said there could be some policy responses here to counteract that if it's so desirable. And they've identified, and I've highlighted, so this is my emphasis, that to counteracting the declining population facing the state, we can do something about it. So housing affordability is a key part of that. They identified how net migration is really the wild card here, and I use the term it is outside of our influence primarily, but if we do build more housing, we might attract that migration component to the state. So that is why the housing target has been such an important topic statewide as well as locally for us. I didn't catch the individual's comments at the top of the call, but it sounded like it was something relevant to that. To putting this into context here is that we don't know exactly how we will achieve that housing target. Will every community meet that mid-range target? Will certain communities exceed that mid-range target? We also don't know the changes that are afoot as we age and as we attract new individuals, new families to the state. There has been a trend over time that our average household size, the number of persons per dwelling unit, has declined. We were somewhere, above 3 in the 50s, and it's continued to decline at a rate. Now we're probably reaching some degree of stability. We're around 2.38 if we think we have that accurate numbers using the census data today in Chittenden County average. Certain communities have higher average occupancy than other communities, but countywide we're at 2.38. We've used some estimates based on just historical trends that we expect that to decline further going out to 2050. And to give two numbers here to benchmark or to bookend these numbers is that we have if we go down to a 2.1 average persons per household, we might add 220,000. That would be our population, excuse me, in the year 2050. So that would be that'd be 50,000 persons relative to where we are today. Maybe 7,000 or 8,000 more could be added if we have a slightly higher number per household. So this is complete conjecture at this point. We don't know how these numbers will occur in the future, but we do know that if we achieve our housing targets, we are likely to increase our population. Makes sense, but we are not baking this into our standard or default forecast because this is an exogenous policy response that is outside of the trends that we have seen over the last 20 to 30 years. These housing targets is an intentional change to those trajectories. And so I think Taylor might have additional insights for you as to how we want to interpret this. But going forward, we have a standard forecast that is baked in trends and extrapolating those trends. And then we have a alternative set of scenarios that will be assessed in long-range planning efforts. And we'll be monitoring all three of those forecasts, if you will. We'll be monitoring what's happening on the ground as we hopefully achieve some of our housing target objectives. And we can see where we will pivot off of maybe those forecasts that we have shown you thus far. Taylor and Jason, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I mean, there was a fair amount of, I'll try to give Taylor a break, but he can jump in if he wants. There was a fair amount of discussion about these at the PAC, these forecasts and how we're using them to plan and concern, I guess I should say, that if we use the forecasts as they are and plan for those, it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think we've cleared it up with them that these are our forecasts and we're seeing them more as a, what if past trends continue and we don't change anything, we're unsuccessful at changing the landscape of affordability and the number of homes built annually, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as what we're planning for, we're still planning for our housing targets. We're going to be updating our long-range transportation plan, our metropolitan transportation plan, as we call it, our MTP, in the coming next calendar year. And the housing targets, this scenario that's up there, 222,000 people to 229,000 people by 2050. This is what we'll be focusing on as part of our long-range transportation plan update, and understanding how people can how we'll be able to accommodate those people from a transportation and travel needs perspective. I'll stop there because I see Andy has a question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand the difference between this chart and the earlier one. I think the earlier one was you have a projection for what the population increase is going to be, and you divided it by the housing targets. I think you said, for example, South Burlington has 24% of the housing target, so they get 24% of the 12,000. That's where the okay. And then the second set is if we build it, they will come.
Correct.
Scenario.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that. Thanks so much.
Yep. That was good clarification, simplification of it. Appreciate it.
All right. I don't need to, we can move on. Some new material for you is the employment side of things. And before I do that, any last questions on the population? And as Andy pointed out, that first number slides was that 12,000 allocation. That is really what I believe the action will be in September to adopt, I think, that those forecasts for population at the municipal level. Is that right, Jason?
Yep.
Okay.
That'll be back for, September meeting.
All right. This is replaying a little bit of what I said, just so you're not surprised when you see an extra slide in the slide deck, but that we are aging and that we have smaller footprints at large. So it really stands to reason that we might have an average decline in our housing size. We also have a reason why the housing target, maybe just to put some light on one aspect of the housing target, is to accommodate those that are already here. So that's why the population may not grow, as it's not a one-to-one, that adding all those households, so in Andy, your perspective, build it and they'll come. Some of those individuals are already here. They're just frankly underhoused. So they are living with parents, friends, and then they could also be unhoused individuals. And then hopefully they could have some dwelling. They could have some structure over their heads. So those are where the housing target numbers accommodate those needs as well as new residents. So employment, a little bit of background here. We have two numbers, and Frank, luckily I have Jeff here to back me up. But we have the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have a set of employment that are covered employment. This is payroll data that pay into a system that is monitored by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I believe this is a non-ag number. This is the historical trend from year 2000. And then we have the Vermont Department of Labor with their workforce. This is the full labor force participation, those because they tracked unemployed and employed persons. This is a total workforce. So this accounts for people who have multiple jobs, not just payroll based, and it includes ag, I believe. So we have a typical multiplier. It's been relatively stable, about 1.1 to 1.15 multiplier. You can clearly see the pandemic had a dramatic effect in all the data, whether it wasn't collected, whether it was actual unemployment. And then we return to where we are today. It's from year 2000, it's been about a 3.4% total increase in employed persons. And this is statewide numbers. Not a huge increase over that 23 or year period. And we're using a forecast here that was derived from Moody's Analytics, combined with our statewide work, combined with some local intelligence in Vermont, that shows generally a 3% increase from today out to 2050 at a statewide level. For Chittenden County will grow faster, we project, than that percentage basis. But because some counties we expect to maybe decline, some counties increase faster. But at a statewide level, that's where we're looking. So it's a similar modest growth. Jeff, do you want to add anything?
No, that's good. And the underlying Moody's scenario, just so everybody knows, had things going significantly negative, which I think is overly pessimistic. And it's driven, so everybody knows, it's driven off of some of the recent Census Bureau estimates of our state population that I think have been overly negative. For instance, it's got Vermont behaving differently than New Hampshire and Maine, and I don't think that that's true. And it's not terribly difficult for any of you that follow this. It's not terribly different from what happened during the 2010 to 2020 decade, where the Census Bureau from about 2014 through 2020 had Vermont losing a significant number of population, a significant amount of population. And then the 2020 census came and say, oh, never mind, we found 20,000 people that live in Vermont. So it was a safe space with the working group because that's something that triggers me. And just so everybody knows, we did, consistent with what the long-term projections from the Legislative Joint Fiscal Office and the administration, and I represent the administration, we flattened it out quite a bit, and we don't buy into the overly negative population estimates that are coming out again from the Census Bureau. And how that relates to employment, it relates to the lack of labor force availability, which then hammers our job counts going forward. So there some modification to some of those underlying purchased off the shelf long-term forecasts, but I think they're credible. I think they're reasonable. And I'm looking forward to the point in time 7, 8, 9 years from now when we show the Census Bureau that they were wrong again.
Setting this up, now you have the county by county breakdown on this slide again for your reference. We will be sharing this with the other regional planning commissions to get their buy-in on this, hopefully.
John,
To Jeff, yeah, Jason?
I think there with Bob, did you have a question? Did I see a hand?
I'm sorry, I didn't see a hand. I apologize.
Oh, Bob, you're muted.
Bob Clark, we can't hear you, unfortunately. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. So how many of the people that are being tracked in your study of the labor force, how many of them are imported labor? And how do you count, or how do you count that? For instance, our operation and nearly every agricultural operation I'm aware of, half the contractors, half the loggers, and this is anecdotal, but there's a lot of people that you have to pull in from out of state or out of the country to get the job done. And so I'm curious, are they in your wave of employed persons?
Yes, is the short answer.
Okay.
And you, of course, fill out every quarter a document because you're covered by the state's unemployment insurance compensation law and send it to the Vermont Department of Labor. And that's how they get captured. In the household survey, which counts employed people not by where they work, but by where they live, they know that they have holes in the survey and they make adjustments to the survey for those types of things based on the number of jobs that are in certain categories that are filled by legal immigrant labor. So they do get captured, Bob. Maybe not as good as things, but that's why about 3 or 4 years from now, they'll look back at things and they'll make adjustments for how they think they might have undercounted or overcounted certain populations.
Okay.
I know that Dana has a question as well.
Dana, you're muted as well.
Okay, I've noted that seems to be sort of a gap. Like I looked at the Beta Technologies employment page, and they need like 50 really highly technical employees. And then the other end of the spectrum is the service industry. And they need restaurants, everyone, senior care. There's so much in that sector. What's going on? Is there like a missing middle that I'm not getting? What's going on there?
That's another trigger question for me, Dana. Just so you know,
what's a trigger question?
I have they're just so everybody knows.
To start a stopwatch. That's what.
There's 2 ways that the Labor Department counts employment. Number one, they measure it by a job count at employers, and they ask them through a survey. There's a survey that does it, but they require them, if they're covered by the state's unemployment insurance law, to file the number of employees that they have every quarter on. And those two, the survey that's done monthly, which is a non-farm survey, so it doesn't include Bob Clark. And then they true them up. The employment by where people live, and obviously about 10% of the state population has multiple jobs. They count them through a random survey of about 2,200 households. It's a rotating survey every 3 or 4 months. And they ask you if you had a job on the week that includes the 12th of the month, or if you were looking for work and didn't have a job on that same week. And so and then they know that the survey doesn't capture everybody. They don't capture new businesses that are coming in, like Beta was once, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so they have adjustments that they make to the survey data for new company births. And they also have an adjustment for company deaths. Okay. Now, the problem with Vermont is that we have a population that's skewed, that now going toward traditional retirement years. Not everybody's working at 70 years old like I am. That kind of thing. A lot of people retire earlier. And so we have a significant percentage of our population that isn't in the workforce, even though they're living here. And the problem that we have is we don't currently have enough people that are looking for work to fill a lot of the jobs that are out there in certain categories. And then we have a company like Beta, which pays really well, has a lot of interesting benefits, gives everybody free lunches, that actually is attractive to people who are maybe working in avionics up in Georgia. They end up coming down and working in Burlington. So Beta gets first call on everybody, and then we have a lot of open jobs elsewhere around. That's just the way the labor force dynamics work. A lot of times we'll have jobs in places where the people who could fill those jobs don't live, and it's not economic for them to commute to the place where that job is. The remote work, which is growing in acceptance, is helping with that a little bit. And we, of course, have a lot of people who work in Vermont and work for companies in other places. That was particularly the case during the pandemic, when people were looking to get out of Boston and New York, and they came up to second homes and they filled those and they telecommuted to work. And so that's kind of peaked and topped off. So we still have a lot of job openings. Before the U.S. Department of Labor stopped the JOLT survey, the job turnover survey that they did, they cut it for budget reasons. We had about 13, 14, and 15,000 jobs, and only about 8 or 9 or 10,000 unemployed people who were looking for a job that didn't have a job to fill them. So we don't have healthy labor market dynamics in that kind of a situation right now. That is limiting our level of job increases, which is why if you look over a period of as many years as we go out through 2050, having a 3% increase in jobs is not a great record. And that's what's at play in these projections.
Got it. I was just sort of interested because when I first moved back to Vermont after college, I got a job as a paralegal. Those jobs are hard to find. You're either working at McDonald's or you might be working at Beta, but I don't know. It just seems like there's a gap there.
Dana, you're dating yourself. When you moved back to Vermont, the labor force dynamics were different than what they are now.
Okay,
the
you're
labor
right.
market in the late 80s, early 90s is a lot different than it is now.
Okay, you're right. Thank you.
And I will say that these were aggregate numbers. We're not taking these down into the occupations. There is some work that Jeff has done that are based on industries of workforce. So there is a lot of information in the background of this, but we are not going to the point of trying to forecast what are the occupations of these workers.
You can't get those down to the town level,
Right.
Jonathan. It's just virtually impossible. They were state and county level, and county squishy enough.
Right. So we're going to go now to the municipal Chittenden County municipal level, just in spirit of time. These are the municipalities that we have for your review. Again, for a hope that in September it can be an adoption. The numbers that were PAC endorsed were very similar to this column here, the second column. They were slightly different than these numbers. We're talking about maybe about 30 persons different in South Burlington, maybe a few different in Burlington as well. The reason for that was that one of the inputs to the way they were allocated was this source of data called the Longitudinal Employment and Household Dynamics data set, LEHD. And that was putting some workers in the wrong municipalities. So this column here, the first column, the PAC looked at a slightly different first column. So that is just the background of why Jason said the PAC is going to be reviewing these numbers again. But this column here, the second column, is what we want to focus on. And this again reflects a composite informed process where we used the existing job locations within the county. We also were looking about where people were going to move in the county and that there would be a bias to work closer to where you are going to live. And then we also informed that data as to what is the dynamics, the momentum that every community has to build in places for people to work. So where are the jobs going to be in the future? So this is a bit of a composite best estimate from the professionals, both within the consultant team that was hired, but also the staff at the MPO. And so this is the allocation that we have for you. Happy to take any questions as to how that looks.
And Jonathan, just to fill in on the point before, that 5-year housing assessment was done by the state and was completed in June of 24. And then VHFA did the housing targets project between August to October of 2024.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. This is the last slide I have for us today. And I believe Jason and we have shared this deck between ourselves, and he can help decide. We can decide whether he sends it out or me, but you can have this slide deck after this for your review with these updated data.
Yeah, I can follow up with that.
John, I don't know who this question is for, but I noticed in one of the slides in an earlier version, a definition of working age population. It appeared to be ages 18 to 72.
That is something, it is, we did not predefine that for this purpose, but we did use it. I was using that number to help get to some of the work that Jeff was alluding to in the workforce participation. We have an estimate of at every 5-year, or excuse me, I think every year going out to 2050, we have broken up the population into 5-year increments, age cohorts. And so we can identify in the year 2050 how many people fall into different age bins. And then we can estimate out of those age bins how many might be eligible to work. So that was what the purpose was, to find that workforce and to have some comfort in these job numbers. We were trying to understand, how does the aging of the population, we are going to have a declining percentage of that population actually in the workforce ages. So I could show that slide to you, but it was more of a internal gut check, if you will, to make sure that we were not having too many workers for our aging population.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right,
Garrett.
Thank you.
Can't hear you, bud.
I clicked the button, just didn't hit it on center. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm being self-employed myself, and knowing many other self-employed folks who derive quite a bit of their income. In my case, it's 95% of my income is from out of state. And how is that tracked? Is that even included in any of this? Because I don't see how the state would even know about it. You know, the feds know I make money, but I guess through W-9s they know from whom. But anyway, was just curious how that's done because I think there are far more people working from home, telecommuting, whatever, than there once were.
Garrett, they don't care about where you make your income. They just want you to know whether or not you said you were working for this particular survey. As long as you said you were working, doesn't matter whether you earn it locally or from out of state. And the upper line in Jason's employment numbers also includes unpaid family workers and gig workers and those kinds of things. That's why there's more in that than the non-farm, non-supervisory job count by business establishment. But it's whether your employment status is determined by how you reply, not where you earn your money from.
Gotcha.
And
Thank
Jeff,
you.
would it be fair? This is an easy thing to pick on, right? Because the LEHD data in our data going in suggested 0 jobs in Buell's Gore. Now, Garrett's working from home, so is he covered in this top line number?
But he doesn't work from Buell's Gore.
Yeah, my brother does, working out of state. There's also a guy running a garage in the Gore, so I know there are people working there. But
and they're also probably not covered by the state's unemployment insurance compensation if they're working for themselves law.
Correct. Yeah.
So that would fall through the cracks as well.
Yep.
But technically, the way that the survey is for employed by place of residence, they would be captured in the state number. It's just when you get down to the granularity of individual municipalities, it's virtually impossible to know. All you can do is share it. They don't collect it and report it by municipality. And that's just another layer of granularity that we need that really goes beyond the scope of the surveys.
Yep. Got it. One other little question. Anybody know when farm jobs and farms are going to be no longer treated as second class? Guess not. Never mind. I'll shut up now.
They're treated on equal ground in the surveys.
Okay. Thanks.
So
I just always notice it's very separate.
I'm just going to observe that the demographic sort of draws you into all sorts of areas of discussion and inquiry. I could actually describe the history of farm workers and household workers and why they were never covered by a bunch of things, and that has to do with class and race, etc., if you go back far enough. But that said, I think in light of time, we should turn on to next steps. Tonight's goal was for people to contemplate this and think about it. John, Jason, do you want to talk about where we go from here in terms of the demographic projections?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we're gonna recirculate the employment figures back to the PAC and make sure they're still comfortable with where they're at. And we didn't hear any significant comments from y'all tonight that feels like things are off the mark substantially, or at least it felt like we had some reasonable justifications for where things are and why they are the way they are. And so we'll be back in September looking for your approval of these figures. Charlie?
Yeah, I just want to kind of reinforce that we are not trying to set any policy with these numbers. We're really trying to reflect the trends of what's happening and then build off of those trends when we get into our planning work going forward. So just in terms of, as we talk back, if you have some conversation with folks in your town about this, please talk to your representative on the Planning Advisory Committee. Yeah, so you make sure you understand what's going on there. And and do let us know if there's any conversations that we can help have in your town that would be helpful. Happy to do that. And I will be going around to the select boards, my per usual September, October. So, if there's somebody that kind of wants us to come talk to your select board or something early on before you vote on it, please let me know.
Yeah, I think the planners really at the PAC, again, just saw this as another kind of call to action. Like this is why we need to work hard to make things more affordable and meet our housing targets.
Thank you. Andy, question or comment?
Yeah, we're working on some impact assessment fees, and folks are already looking at these numbers as to assess what our growth's going to look like. And so having good understanding of what all these means is going to be at least helpful for us.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, John. And Jeff, thanks for your comments related. We're ready to move on?
Yeah, I guess last offer, I'll just say if there's
Yeah.
any follow-up on this, if we can give you, I think, till the end of the month for any sort of additional input, if something comes to the mind, feel free to email me.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, John.
All right, moving on to draft committee appointments.
Yeah, I'll pick that up. This is on page 10 of your meeting packet. And sorry, I was remiss in not telling the chair we have a couple new board members here this month. Bob Clark got appointed at the annual meeting. Welcome, Bob. And also McHugh Devitt from the new rep from Williston. Welcome. And apologies, Bart, for not giving you a heads up on that.
Welcome. Sorry, I was remiss as well.
No, and but in particular for the new members, but also for longer time members, at the beginning of every fiscal year, we kind of review our committees, who's on them. It's also a time if somebody wants to get off of a committee, nothing's held against you if you want to do that. But this is a time to kind of look at the appointments and any changes. And this will also come back to you in September to be finalized and acted upon. I tried to highlight a couple vacancies that are clearly here without anybody jumping off of a committee. The Board Development Committee has one potential open seat. They don't have to be filled, but up to 4 board members can be on the Board Development Committee. Also on the Long Range Planning Committee, which just finished a kind of intense couple years of work. Hopefully it settles down a little bit, although they will have the transportation plan to look at in the next year or two, as well as maybe a couple other related plans, maybe economic development strategy, maybe hazard mitigation plan. So there's a couple vacancies there. And then other than that, we tried to update to reflect our current understanding of who's where. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to you. I think this is an opportunity for people to voice preferences, get on or off, but I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Charlie. And, maybe start with on. Tess.
Hi, I just would like to throw in my name for serving on the Long Range Planning Commission, but in order to not overload myself, I'd prefer to come off of the Unified Working Plan Committee. That's
All right, so noted. Tess, I think we make that work.
Sorry about that. I'm in a place with a lot of background noise right now. I'm not home right now.
Fair enough. Any other folks with interest, especially for the vacant positions? I will point out that the Unified Planning Work Program Committee is cyclical. It's not really year-round.
Yeah, that's 3 meetings, January, end of January, February, March. So that's a pretty constrained annual committee.
If there's no one to fill in on that, I'm fine with still serving on it. I don't want to make there be like this new vacancy, but I just wanted to indicate I was like more interested in serving on the Long Range Planning Commission.
Well, thanks for that. Anyone else with interest or disinterest? There are some vacancies.
Let's see, Jackie's hand up.
I have my hand up because I think I'm still supposed to be the chair of the UPWP, or is...
Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry, Jackie. I think I didn't list you just because that's like dictated, but yeah, I can add that back in for clarity. Thank you. Sorry, no insult intended.
No, I didn't take insult, and maybe I can just take Tess's place as
the chair. The vice chair has a place as the chair of the UPWP committee. Regardless.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anybody is curious about committees, please let me know. Happy to have a conversation and tell you a little bit more about what the committee does, or see where your interest is. So again, you got a couple months to think about it, and let us know if you're interested in anything. Appreciate it.
Charlie, based on your experience and past history here, does this merit perhaps a separate kind of email looking for interest on different groups?
Could do that.
I'll just note that sometimes these things get buried as part of a broader agenda. It might be one approach to send it out to everybody.
I am going to make a note to do that kind of probably in like mid-August or something, where we get a little closer to September. Maybe you're starting to think about coming out of summer, but don't rush it. So anyway, but yeah, happy to do that part. Thank you.
That makes sense. Any other comments, suggestions on this topic? You will hear more about it. Thank you. And I will observe, as I've seen in town government, where it takes a bunch of committees and numerous volunteers to make things work. I think that applies to the Regional Planning Commission as well, beyond the staff, a bunch of committees and volunteers. Okay, on to item 9, semi-annual legislative policy list review.
Yeah, so I'll pick this up also. Thank you, Bart. This is something we started doing a number of years ago, just to give the board a sense of what staff is kind of monitoring in the legislature. Sometimes more actively participating depending on the topic. But really want to put this in front of you. We do this every 6 months, July and January. If you have any feedback, I think this is a great time to offer it, of like, oh, what about this topic? Or particularly when we get to January, hey, I heard this is coming up. Please try to pay a little attention to this topic. So I'll run through this real quickly. It's a new biennium. So I think the first item is just to let you know, sorry, I should also disclose, I chair the RPC state association called VAPTA, the Vermont Association of Planning Development Agencies. I chair their government relations committee. So I do, in that role, get more involved in legislative actions on behalf of all the RPCs, with also keeping an eye towards Chittenden County as well. So at the beginning of every biennium, so we'll have an election this fall, we'll have new legislators. The RPCs try to get in front of relevant committees to brief them on what RPCs have been doing and things that we may all be interested in. That's number one. Act 250 updates, obviously been a lot of conversation about updating Act 181, Tier 3 road rule got repealed. We'll kind of keep watching that story, see if it evolves further. There is going to be, number 3 is Act 59 from a few years ago, required the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board to report back to the legislature on conservation efforts to get to 30% by 2030 and 50% by 2050. We'll see where that conversation goes. But those recommendations are supposed to come back to the legislature at the end of this calendar year. Number 4 is more of a holdover. The big thing that happened there was the CHIP financing tool a year or 2 ago. Transportation bill, you just got a little insight into that from the chief engineer of VTrans. We'll see how that evolves. Related to that is also transit financing, which has been an issue for GMT for sure. Climate change, been kind of lightly monitoring what's happening there. Related to that, resiliency and emergency management. One thing that may pick up quite a bit more over the next 18 months is regional and it says improved regional and municipal governance. Sorry, I think that should say county. There's a county and regional governance study committee that is underway that owes recommendations back to the legislature at the end of 27. So that's something that's also coming up in our select board forums quite a bit. And then just technical assistance funding. And the last item is school district consolidation. I think it was the last addition to this, the last time we looked at this, just to kind of keep an eye on what's happening and any implications for our towns or for the RPC. So happy to take any feedback, questions, or suggestions of things that are missing that we should keep track of. Or if that's enough, would be a fine answer too.
I am seeing nothing. I'm going to conclude that means that's enough.
Good, thank you.
Any other comments? Especially anything missing? Apparently not. Thanks, Charlie. Ready to move on. Number 10, staff introductions and reintroductions, I think I'm tempted to say. Marshall, are you ready to go?
Sounds good. Thanks, Bard. Good evening, everyone. I'm Marshall Distel, and I'm a senior transportation planner. I joined CCRPC back in 2014, actually as a summer intern, and then I was hired full-time as a transportation planner in 2015. I hold a bachelor's degree in geography from UVM and also have a master's degree in natural resources from Virginia Tech. I live in South Burlington with my wife and our 2-year-old, and we've got another one on the way due in September. So yeah, over the past 11 years at CCRPC, I've had the opportunity to work on really a wide range of transportation planning projects and programs. I'd say much of my work focuses on managing local and regional planning studies related to roadways, intersections, park and rides, public transit, active transportation. Just some highlights for me over the years, project-wise, has been, I think the Winooski Transportation Master Plan. That was the first study I managed. That was a good one. I managed the Mallets Bay Transportation Stormwater Management Study in Colchester. That resulted in a roundabout as the preferred alternative at the Bayside intersection. And I believe that's scheduled for construction in FY28. I've also managed our countywide park and ride plan, transportation impact fee studies, rural transit and transit financing studies, and a number of other sort of multimodal connection projects and traffic calming work. Additionally, I also manage our annual Unified Planning Work Program process, and that establishes our work plan and priorities for the year. Beyond transportation, I've also previously been involved over the years in emergency management work, done some local development review board assistance, water quality related projects, grant writing, and a lot of larger county-wide initiatives related to our functional class system and national highway system. I would say, just as a planner, one area that I've, become really passionate about is the relationship between transportation and land use. I've become, quite involved with this organization called the Congress for the New Urbanism over the past few years. And that, I feel like that's really strengthened my, interest in creating walkable, vibrant, transit-ready communities. And just, I've really found that transportation and land use, they aren't separate conversations. They're really two sides of the same coin. And that sort of philosophy has aligned pretty well with our transit-oriented development raise grant work that I've been managing over the past few years and is now wrapping up. Just quickly on that, we were awarded a $2.25 million planning grant from the Department of Transportation, which and it's essentially involved developing transit-oriented development plans for 12 communities across the 5-county region. And that work has involved master planning, zoning updates, a regional real estate market analysis, and an exploration of opportunities to support future, transit connections. So yeah, looking back, it's been rewarding to grow from a summer intern into a planner who's had the opportunity to lead many of these projects. And I've been, fortunate to work with a great team here at CCRPC and have, definitely enjoyed the connections I've made throughout our communities and just, looking forward to continuing that work in the years ahead. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to share a little about my background and the work I do here.
Marshall, that was great. Thank you. Anybody have any other questions or comments for Marshall? I'm not seeing or hearing anything. Thank you again, Marshall. It was both substantive and pithy.
Thanks, Barb.
Moving on to Sarah.
Thanks, Bard. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Muskin, and I'm a senior planner and project manager on the land use team. I think Bard was right with the reintroductions because it was exactly 3 years ago that Marshall and I did our intros during my first or second week of work here. So I've been at CCRPC for 3 years. I live in Heinsberg. Before joining CCRPC, I lived in North Carolina, where I received my master's of public health. While I was there, I worked for 2 housing nonprofits where I supported the construction of tiny homes for households with extremely low incomes and also the doing accessibility improvements for low-income residents. Later, I worked at the EPA researching wildfire smoke exposure. Before moving to North Carolina, I worked for several riverkeeper organizations in Northern California, focused on watershed protection and environmental advocacy because my undergrad degree is in environmental science. At CCRPC, I work on the land use team where I provide technical assistance to municipalities. I help update the regional plans, support community engagement, coordinate the regional housing convening, and I'm currently being onboarded to support our brownfields program and our emergency management team. I had my first baby about 8 months ago. So for the past 8 months, I've been working part-time and in more of a supportive role. Recently, I've been working with Taylor on coordinating an update to the comprehensive economic development strategy. I've been supporting getting the ECOS plan through the finish line with the LURB. And I've been maintaining partnerships with organizations like Vermont Health Foundation and United Way. Before my leave, I was really heavily involved in the ECOS plan update and coordinated a lot of that public engagement, prepared summaries that you all heard many times, and drafted and edited plan content. Next year, I'm looking forward to the Shelburne Road Master Plan in South Burlington. Outside of work, I like to run, spend time on and near rivers, and hang out with my new baby and friends. Happy to go into more detail if folks want.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Well, first I'd say congrats on the new baby. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Looks like not. Thank you. I personally think these are helpful to maintain some connection between the board and staff, which doesn't always happen by itself. So thank you for describing yourself. It looks like no other comments or questions. All right, thanks again. Move on to item 11, board training.
That's me. Hi, everyone. I'm very aware of the time here, being almost 8 o'clock, and the fact that I am your third presentation of the evening. So I will try to make this brief, thorough, but brief. I do have a lot of slides, but they go pretty quickly. So I'm just gonna share my screen and we will run through this together. So let me just go into presenter mode in just a moment. Okay, can you all see my screen as a full?
Yes.
Full screen here?
Oh,
Okay,
actually, it's not the full screen. There you go.
Oh, okay, perfect. Takes a minute sometimes. Okay, so my role tonight is just to orient all of us on the board and committee member handbook and code of conduct that was adopted in March of 2025. So fairly new. Just to ground us in what this is, it is a 13-page document, not super long, so we definitely encourage you to read it outside of this brief presentation. So it clarifies the roles and responsibilities of the board and all of our committee members, establishes shared expectations for how we work with one another, supports respectful, effective leadership, and provides a clear process for addressing concerns if or when they do arrive through our code of conduct. So this is intended to be a really helpful resource for current and new and prospective board and committee members, and anybody who's interested in our work. It's, again, 13 pages, nothing too crazy, and there's a lot of information packed in there. So definitely encourage you, I'll drop the link in the chat after this, and encourage you to check that out if you have not already. So just a brief agenda. I'm just going to walk through the overview of the handbook. We're not going to go page by page. So handbook overview, your role as a board member. I'll talk a little bit about the code of conduct and reserve a little bit of time at the end if there are questions. So why this matters, we have a little checklist here, but we created this handbook and code of conduct as an update to the last one, which was, I think, 11 years old at this point. So definitely needed some modernization, needed a more robust code of conduct. And overall, it helps establish expectations and clarifies responsibilities of board and committee members, helps us build trust with one another, encourages respectful dialogue, helps us strengthen relationships, and resolve concerns early if they do arise. And that way we can keep the focus on serving the region. And so I am not going to dive into what we do at this point. There's going to be a CCRPC 101 presentation and training in the fall. And so that will be the part where we dive deeper into this, but the handbook does include some of this, so that's why it's in there. So a little note on key areas of focus, as well as a little plug for our 60-year timeline, because we are in our 60th year of the CCRPC, celebrating that at our annual meeting with all of you. So thanks for that. And I'll have a link to that. And actually there is a link to that in the agenda as well. So the entire code of conduct and handbook is built around these 4 core values of CCRPC. So integrity, accountability, respect, and inclusion. It outlines our purpose, and everything is built around our commitment to equity, which the board did adopt in September of 2024. So a bit about our organizational structure. This is just a visual representation pulled from the actual handbook of just the board of directors and our voting and municipal representatives, and followed by other representatives, some of whom are non-voting, those who vote on RPC business only, and those who vote on MPO business only. And again, this will be covered in the CCRPC 101 presentation. And then just a quick note about committees, as Charlie just said, and we just went over the as the bylaws indicate, all CCRPC board members are expected to participate in a minimum of one standing committee. So as you can see, we have many to choose from. So depending on your level of interest and expertise, we encourage you to look into that and get in touch with us if you are interested in serving. And then no need to memorize this, or even it's a little overwhelming looking at it on a big screen here, but as you all know, we have a new organization chart because we've done a bit of restructuring as of effective July 1st of this year. So this is just a visual, I'm a visual person, so hopefully this is helpful to some of you, but this is just a visual representation of our current structure. So we had 4 staff members that were promoted to leadership positions, so that's reflected here. We always have an updated organization chart on our staff webpage, so that can be found there as well. So the handbook does walk through board and committee member expectations and specific responsibilities. I've put a few of them here, but there are tons more details in the actual handbook, really going into detail about what is expected, both at every meeting and just within our communities. So setting organizational direction, adopting plans and policies, providing oversight, representing your municipality and having a two-way channel of communication, and preparing and participating in meetings. And as I noted a number of times now, we do have a CCRPC 101 training coming up that will cover that in more detail. So I'm kind of going a little bit fast here. Feel free to jump in if anyone wants to interrupt me, but we're already on to the code of conduct, which is part 2 of the handbook. So the code of conduct, thinking about the code specifically and then how we implement it. So I'm going to talk about this in 2 quick parts. So first, why a code of conduct, grounding us in the why. This is intended to be a guideline that reflects and cultivates our values, our core values, those 4 that we talked about, as well as our equity commitment and our purpose. And so this is intended to be actively practiced by all CCRPC representatives. And I added and staff here just to note that we also have our own even more robust code of conduct that we follow as a staff. And this one is the one for the board and committees is sort of a subset of that, definitely toned down and a much shorter version, but we do have and use our own as well. So this helps us work respectfully, build trust among one another, support productive meetings, and serve the public well. And so what does the code include? I have this list here. I won't go through every single one of them. You are all familiar with our expectations, our group expectations that we share at the start of meetings. We walk through Vermont's open meeting law and public meeting expectations as members of the as board members and members of the CCRPC committees. There's a conflict of interest policy. It talks a little bit about communication, two-way communication with your select board or city council, as well as sections on partisan and nonpartisan political activity and harassment and discrimination. So again, far more detail in the actual handbook. So this is a graphic pulled straight from the handbook. You've all seen these group expectations. This is something that we have started sharing at the beginning of meetings and just trying to normalize within the organization so that when these expectations are followed, it really reduces some of those pain points or conflict points that could occur. So being present and ready to actively participate, giving space for others to speak, using accessible language, not using jargon and acronyms. And so all of these. So we like to share these at the beginning of presentations. I just have like a little slide here to show when we're giving presentations to the public, we've started sharing these as at the start to they're always in draft format so that we ask if anyone has any suggestions or modifications that they'd like to make at the beginning of a public meeting. And that can help everyone get on the same page and just know what to expect. So we've really tried to operationalize that, especially in the past year. I have this old school photo. I know this must be from, I think, 2008, Charlie, and we've got Garrett on here too. Threw that in there for fun. So the board handbook does talk about meeting expectations. And there's, I believe, 1 full page on this. So we expect that folks will attend regularly and prepare in advance. We do send the meeting agenda and packet out just about a week in advance, usually Thursday before the meeting. And just a reminder for staff or for board and committee members that meetings are public and so they are recorded. So all that to say, anything you say or do, especially now with video, is preserved in the record indefinitely. So just reminders there as well. And just quickly, there's a section in here about representing CCRPC as board members and the communication with your select board and city council and other partners, other organizations that you may be involved in. We always encourage communication there to sort of keep the channels flowing. There's a note on partisan and nonpartisan political activity. So planning is a political activity, and so it works best when it's nonpartisan. And so there's some guidelines in there for what is acceptable. So you may participate in political activities personally, but when you are representing CCRPC, you may not. So we have a little definition there, what we specifically mean, but there's more information in the handbook. And then, as I mentioned, a section on harassment and discrimination as well. And this is kind of a pared down version from our more robust staff version that we spent over a year fine-tuning. Some more information. And then implementation. So how does this actually work in practice? So as I mentioned, all board and committee members are responsible for the implementation of the code of conduct as well as staff. And you do not have to read all of this. This is a lot of text, but just the ways that we implement the code of conduct. We have onboarding for new board members and orientation where we hand out the handbook and reference it. Education and training, where we, like I'm doing right now, walk through this typically at the beginning of a fiscal year, or again, if somebody's joining as a new member. Regular feedback. So we've had this for about a year now, and we're thinking about ways to get feedback from the board and from other staff and committee members on how this is working in practice. And last year we implemented like an acknowledgement form so that board members kind of confirm that they received this and that they read it. We're still kind of debating how best to do that. And the executive committee discussed that at their July meeting. But essentially we're going to expect that folks either attend a training like this or read the document and kind of let us know. So that's evolving, but you may receive a digital form at some point, or folks who are not here tonight may receive that, and we might ask them to read that separately since they couldn't make the training. So conflict resolution, this is just a quick snapshot that's pulled from the code of conduct. This is just a helpful quick guide if something does arise that you need to address. This is just I am this person reporting about this person. Who do I speak to? So it's just a kind of a really quick snapshot to help folks get information in front of the right party. And finally, this is outlined a lot more thoroughly in the handbook, but we do have a more robust conflict resolution process as well, including a restorative process for issues that can't be sort of resolved person to person or might need a little bit more mediation or support, as well as a formal process for things that might be a little bit more severe. Again, the majority of any kind of conflicts that do arise don't ever meet this or make it to this level, but we just have this process in place so that everyone is aware and knows what to do if things do pop up. I just ran through that very fast. So I will just say there are a few resources here linked, there are many resources here linked at the end of the handbook, and these are all live links. I'll drop the handbook link in the chat. So definitely encourage you to read that, reach out with any questions. I know we have a few board members who are new, who are not here tonight, as well as a few who did make it. So we're all here as resources. We want this handbook to be helpful and usable and in real time, right? If you have a question, we want it to be consulted. And so we're always looking for feedback on that if you have it. So with that, very quick overview. I'm going to pause and thank you all for your attention solely in the evening. And if anybody has any questions or comments, I'm happy to hear them.
Thank you, Emma. Maybe mention briefly the CCRPC 101.
Yeah, so I think I believe Charlie gives this presentation. So we have a series of board trainings that will happen in the fall, and so I'm not sure the exact order of that, but I believe that one's first, CCRPC 101. Charlie's nodding. So that's just going to go overall over the organizational structure. Sort of, I think Charlie couldn't chime in, but I think it's a pretty broad brush of kind of everything that you need to know. We have previous recordings and versions that are posted online as well.
Yeah.
But I think
good.
and then there will be an MPO 101 as well. And then I believe there's one more. I'm spacing right now.
Yeah, just kind of the non-transportation side of the shop.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Emma?
I don't know how, as an organization that is an acronym factory, can speak amongst itself without using acronyms.
We try, Jeff. We're not always successful, but we try.
And those, just so everybody knows, those board development sessions are scheduled about a half hour before our regular meetings. So, and then my only other question, Charlie, is, are we going to go to quarterly in person?
Yeah, I think well, I'm gonna look at Bard, but I think the executive committee has definitely been good with quarterly. You know, so we did June in person. We'll do what's the next quarter? September.
September.
Yeah, so September, yeah, plan to be in person. And then for those of you that are new, in December, we get together and do a legislative breakfast, inviting legislators and select board chairs, et cetera, to a breakfast meeting where we discuss the upcoming session. So yeah, well, yeah, Jeff, we are kind of on that quarterly, and certainly open to doing more if there's a will to do that.
It's the only way we get to interact with each other, because little pictures on a computer screen isn't necessarily the way to build relationships.
Good point. Thank you, Jeff. Other comments or questions, especially for Emma? Emma, thanks again for doing this. Garrett, is that a hand up?
No.
No, it's a thumbs up on the quarterly meetings.
Fair enough. Thank you.
But thank you, Emma. Nicely done.
Yeah. So reminder that document and the resources remain available, especially for new folks to get oriented. It can be daunting at times, especially if Jeff points out an organization that's replete with acronyms, which is for me a cultural sign of there's lots of different things going on. All right. Thank you very much, Emma. On to Chair Executive Director updates. I don't have anything really new. Really talking about 60th anniversary timeline reorg. I don't know what else you have, if anything else, Charlie.
In terms of anything else, just a little note, and I just mentioned it earlier, that I will be reaching out to your town manager or administrator or clerk to get on your select board city council chair. For those of you that are newer, we do a annual report for each municipality of what we did in the last fiscal year. So it's kind of I always call it a customer service check-in with the select board of like, are we doing what you expected us to do it the way you expected us to do it? So just a heads up, that typically takes kind of September, October, and into November to get to every town, but we will do it this fall. And then the 60th anniversary timeline. Thank you to Emma for her work on putting that together. There's a link on the agenda if you want to go check that out. It's just a FYI. And then reorganization. Emma shows you the org chart, but just to give you a little more flavor. So promoted Taylor to deputy director. Thank you, Taylor, and congratulations. And then promoted Jason Charest and Brian Davis to program managers on the transportation side. And I'm also getting a little bit more involved with transportation with Elaine's departure. So the three of us are kind of handling the transportation stuff. And then Taylor is overseeing the non-transportation side, which Dan Albrecht is the program manager on natural resources. And then we also promoted Kate McCarthy as a program manager on more land use. So one of the things, we do an annual staff survey. And so kind of what was all that change about? Yes, Eleni left, so we needed to fill big shoes, but also in our staff survey, it was kind of coming back that Taylor and Eleni were pretty overloaded, and they were strong people, but eventually we decided maybe we should help them a little bit. So trying to disperse the workload a little more evenly. So happy to take any questions. And Emma, I think that org chart is on the staff page of the website now.
It is, yes. I just dropped the link in the chat so folks can link to that directly.
Emma's like, yeah, like if you remember MASH, like radar. But thank you. Hey, John.
Charlie, would you be able to let us know the town representatives know when you're going to visit our select boards? I'd like to be at the one you're at.
I will thank you for reminding. On that note, yeah, you will. Sorry, I should have said this, John. When I schedule those with the town, I will send you an appointment. And I know I'm not. Sometimes you can't make it. Totally understandable. Sure. But I will send you an appointment to get it on your calendar, in hopes that works. And maybe every once in a while somebody has an email system that doesn't talk well with our Microsoft. So feel free to just follow up with me or call me or whatever if you're not sure what this thing is that came into your email.
Yeah.
But for most people, it seems to have worked for me to send the appointment.
Great.
John, I wouldn't let him go talk to Mike's select board without me either.
Yeah. No, and I really do prefer, and the reason I'm inviting you is I really want you to be there. Because if it's a joint conversation, that's great.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I've got, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Charlie. Moving on to item 13, reminder that the committee liaison activities and reports are available on the links below in your agenda. Any questions or comments about any of those, other than just to note that they exist and how you access them? Then a new item 13.1, members items. Any members items? Jeff Carr.
Hey, Taylor, I just was wondering where we were at with the LURB on our land use plan and what our expectations were.
We are 1 week out from our final public hearing with the Land Use Review Board. And so 1 o'clock next Wednesday, we'll hold a public hearing here at CCRPC. Staff's pretty well prepped for that meeting in terms of what we'll present. It'll be very focused on changes to the plan between pre-application in October 2025, which seems like a very long time ago, and the plan that the board adopted in May 2026. LURB asked for a little bit additional of additional information about some advisory comments we didn't address. So I'm working on a memo right now. Charlie and I will meet tomorrow morning to get that into the LURB by Friday. But overall, Jeff, we're feeling very positive about our public hearing next Wednesday. We hope that they will close the public hearing next Wednesday, and then they will issue a decision in writing approving our plan within 15 days.
Oh, so it's only 15 days? Oh, good. Okay.
15.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for putting members' items back on the agenda.
You're welcome. Another hand up.
Yeah, Ben Ornstein here from Westford. When exactly is the meeting? And it's here at CCRPC offices with the LURB?
The meeting with the LURB is at CCRPC next Wednesday at 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock, okay. And it's open to us, everybody?
The general public is allowed to attend. They were allowed to attend our first public hearing as well. The LURB has generally wanted to how do I say this? Not have board members and staff and municipal staff members talk too much during those meetings. They've typically wanted to hear from staff and the general public that can attend as well. But you are certainly welcome to attend, Ben. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other members' items? Seeing none, I believe we're
I move
ready
we adjourn.
for a motion to adjourn. Thank you,
I
Jeff.
second. It's Garrett.
Thank you, Garrett. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for
Aye.
your patience through over 2 hours of
Yeah,
our meeting
thank you
tonight.
so much. We'll try not to have such a long meeting next time, but thank you.
But it was a lot of good stuff.
Enjoy the
Take
rest of
care,
your
y'all.
summer, all. Thank you.
You too.